Hi, I'm Meg West, host of Garden Wise, the quarterly sustainable landscaping show. This episode is all about water harvesting and rain gardens. We'll tell you why it's beneficial and how to implement some techniques in your own yard. Here to remind us about the importance of water harvesting is Professor Autumn Malanka, who will remind us a little bit about the water cycle. So, if you were snoozing in your 4th grade science class, listen up.
Hello everyone, my name is Mrs. Malanka and I'm a scientist for the City of Santa Barbara's Hydrology Department. I'm here today to talk to you about the water cycle and how it benefits and actually sustains all of our lives. In general, the water cycle is 100% dependent on our oceans. Water evaporates from our oceans and condensates as water vapor into clouds. Then it falls as precipitation, whether that's rain, snow, or hail, onto the planet Earth. And that's the water that we all depend on to live. Now, a lot of that fresh water is caught up in ice and snow, and it can stay there for years and years and years. So, what we're really depending on is the even smaller percent of that fresh rainwater that falls as rain and runs down our mountains into the creeks and then slowly makes its way back into the ocean, thus the water cycle. So in summary, over 70% of our city is actually covered in hardscape. And the trouble with that is that the natural fresh water is no longer being captured by soil and filtering into the ground and being naturally treated by soil and plants. Instead, it's being fast-tracked off of these hardscapes and hard surfaces directly into storm drains and into creeks or even underground. So the benefit that gardens bring, or native landscaping brings, to the water cycle and to fresh water is that it brings us back to what was originally supposed to happen, which is water is captured and treated and ends up back in the groundwater basins and back to the ocean in a natural state rather than polluted by hardscapes and present-day development.
Preserving the clean water that we have is extremely important. Think of it this way. Every storm is a resource, and by keeping that water on site, you can reduce your irrigation demand and help to recharge groundwater reserves. So, when it rains, don't let that valuable rain run off your property and pollute the ocean. Build a rain garden instead. Coming up, we'll show you how. First up, an organization in Santa Barbara that helps teach and equip people with the tools they need to create their own rain gardens.
We put on community-based, hands-on workshops that are based on a barn raising model so that people come together and learn skills and the benefits of water harvesting, rain gardens, gray water systems, native plants, veggie gardens, food forests, and also learn how to implement those practical solutions, working on different people's projects. I noticed in Santa Barbara there's a lot of people who are really committed to environmentalism and keeping our waterways and our oceans clean, but we really haven't changed our infrastructure and the way that our landscapes look throughout our city and our county for the amount of interest and commitment that people have. And so it looks to me like there's 3 kinds of people. There's some people who want to pay someone else to make their homes green. There's some people who are handy and do it themselves. But most of us kind of fall into another category where we have the passion and commitment, but we don't have enough skills or enough money to really bring projects to fruition. And that's why the Green Living Co-op was born. Today we're doing a workshop called A Water-Wise Victorian Garden. And it's kind of a fun title because Victorian gardens were traditionally very decadent and used a lot of water. And so we have a couple of people who are first-time homeowners who have been committed to being green for a long time. And they inherited this home that has this huge lawn. And they want to have it look like a Victorian garden, but they also want it to be water-wise. So it was really fun to try to figure out how can we really make that happen. It's kind of an oxymoron. So I went out and investigated what kind of native and drought-tolerant plants in this area were traditionally part of a Victorian garden. And so they took out part of the lawn ahead of time. And so now we are digging basins and berms that will slow, spread, and sink the runoff that comes from the backyard, the driveway, and the roof of the house, so that instead of running down the driveway out into the street and carrying pollutants into the ocean, it's going to stay here and it's going to feed native plants, and we're also going to plant a fig tree in that area.
By working together, these professionals and volunteers were able to complete the rain garden in a single day. Recently, the Green Living Co-op transitioned to a new organization called Sweetwater Collaborative. To get more information about the collaborative, visit their website. Up next, we headed to Goleta to take a look at another property and see what kind of water harvesting tools they've implemented.
I think at the point that we bought it, we didn't think that much about the landscaping, aside from that we didn't like the juniper forest that we had. And we knew that we wanted to go for something that was really water conserving and using native plants and a lot of edibles.
Stacy and Joelle contacted me in summer of 2010, so about 2 years ago, and they were fun clients because right from the get-go they wanted to do sort of the things that are near and dear to a garden designer's heart, which was they wanted things that were environmentally responsible, they wanted natives, they wanted to be in sync with the climate, the seasons, attract beneficial insects and birds and butterflies, and also something that's sort of new to design, especially in a residential setting, is keeping water on site, the rainwater, prevent runoff from going into the drains and gutters and flowing out to the ocean. One of the ideas with rainwater harvesting is you want to create swales or sort of riffles down a property so that the water can't reach and it slows down rather than the water just sheeting off.
When they moved into their home, there were no existing rain gutters. They did their research and installed an entire water collection system consisting of rain gutters, rain barrels, and an underground reservoir.
This is one of our water collection systems. The water comes here from the gutter. We have this thing here which basically is a filter so that the leaves don't get the system plugged. And then what happens first, that water is diverted to the rain barrel. The rain barrel actually now it's full. So when it gets full, then actually the water stops flowing to the rain barrel and goes down the rest of the gutter. And then we have a system underground that goes under this path. This is where the water comes, the excess water from the rain barrel. We have an outlet here, and actually has a cover so that mosquitoes don't go in if there's water here. So when there's lots of rain, the water comes here. And there's sort of a little dry creek here, and the water gently flows down, where there's a hole that you can't see, it's filled with rocks and then dirt on top, so that water can accumulate there, and eventually feeds the tree. We have a persimmon tree down there, and whatever vegetation we have there, so the water basically stays on the property. So this one is a little different. Here we have a rain chain, which is very pretty when it's raining. Now, of course, it's dry, and what happens is that the water comes down. And then there's this urn, and it overflows, and so when it rains, water comes through the sides. And here, there's again a big hole underneath it, full of rocks, and so the water actually sort of stays here. It doesn't roll off, but most of the water stays here.
The next thing was, and this was really fun, they wanted to have an edible garden in their front yard, but have it be ornamental. And not just growing annuals like tomatoes, but also integrating bearing fruit trees and sort of unusual ones. They have a cherimoya tree and a fuyu persimmon, both of which are more farmers market type crops. You know, they're specialty things. And so those are fun. Blueberries, we can now grow blueberries in our climate, and so they have 4 or 5 blueberry plants in as well. And so those are permanent. Artichokes, which are really sort of a sculptural, you know, they're a nice design element.
Next, Joan showed us around the landscape and explained each beneficial element of the garden and how they function when it rains.
Because we have so many succulents in the area and a lot of plants that do like it dry, we've mulched with gravel. So it's both an aesthetic thing, it shows the plants off, and it's also a functional thing that it's not collecting and trapping too much water up underneath the base of the plant above the soil. But where the trees are, these are mulched with organic material. This is a bark mulch. It's going to break down and release nutrients into the soil, and that will be continued to be replenished over time. And so that helps, and that's why with any of the edibles, with the 2 trees and with the blueberries, and then obviously inside the raised vegetable bed, those are all mulched with organic material because you do want that replenishing of the nutrients into the soil. On the other side of the driveway, we were able to create, because of the slope, the raised vegetable bed and 2 stone walls dropping down to the street. On this side, we really didn't have enough slope or depth, so we just have the 1 wall, and it's a little bit taller, but again, dipping down behind it on this crunchy gravel path is another deeper swale. And on these swales, they're contoured down, and then they're filled with gravel or with rubble, and that's why they don't look like they're a depression along the surface, but there's something slowing down the water underneath and trapping and capturing that water. And then down at this end, we have the other fruit tree. This cherimoya started out just as a little stick, and it's already got good, super healthy growth. And you can see one of the benefits right here is that if you take a look at the mulch, it's nice and damp. It's not super soaky. It's not sitting in a swamp, but the soil is nice and damp throughout the root area, which is really good and healthy for the plant. There's also a little bit of gopher wire as a precaution, and the tree's just doing really well. We have ceanothus, which is a no-water plant over here on the other side of the cherimoya, and so because we've got that gravel drain behind, we can irrigate the cherimoya and yet still have a dry water plant really close. It's kind of interesting with rain gardens because it's not always using the rainwater to irrigate a particular plant. And I think that that's really illustrated in this garden very well because we have some plants that really are low water plants, the succulents, the natives. An example of a plant that's really adaptable is the California gray rush, which is this Juncus potens, and it can handle both a very dry location as well as a very wet location, so it's very forgiving. The other use of the rainwater is channeling the big whoosh that comes with a heavy storm and directing that water to the cherimoya tree, to the persimmon tree at the opposite end of the yard, and recharging those areas, and then also filling the rain barrels, which are then used for supplemental watering, for hand watering later on. And I think Stacy made a really nice point too about the natives, that they really, in the middle of the summer, if there is a little bit of water in the rain barrel, having fresh rainwater on them is just a really natural thing.
Rain gardens are not only for residential sites. At the Patagonia headquarters in Ventura, we incorporated bioswales, permeable paving, and curb cuts into an existing parking lot. These retrofits allow the rain to slow, spread, and sink into landscaped areas. Here we are at the Patagonia campus in Ventura, California, and about a year ago they hired me to help them make the landscape here more sustainable. Now, one of the places we focused on is the parking lot here of their retail store, and before this redesign was implemented, it was just a skinny little planting area with some junipers, and when it rained, all of the water just ran off right into the sewer, and there wasn't this bioswale to catch the water. So as you can see, what we've done here is put new curbs in with curb cuts that allow the water to come through when it rains, and then it filters through these native plants through down to this rocky low point in the swale, and then it flows underneath the driveway apron at the end and infiltrates into the soil and recharges the groundwater and cleans the water. So we want to slow down the water, let it infiltrate and bring out the toxins and everything, let them filter through the soil so they get cleaned out. And that's nature's way of cleaning water. So we're just helping with natural processes, making that happen with our gardens. Before we added this bioswale and natural water filtration to this area, the water just kind of pooled around this driveway. But we've improved the design here by adding this culvert that allows the water to come down underneath the driveway, and then it infiltrates into this natural area behind. We haven't changed any of the natural drainage patterns. We've just given the water a place to go. Another strategy that we use to decrease stormwater runoff is pervious pavers. And I'm standing on some right now. These are pavers that actually allow the water to go through the paver itself. So in contrast to a regular asphalt, which just runs off the water and doesn't allow any infiltration whatsoever, these pavers actually are sort of like a sponge and just let the water go through when it rains. So by installing pervious paving walkways like this, we decrease the overall runoff of a site. So when you're planning your ocean-friendly garden, one thing to look at is where does the water come from and how can you make the best use of it. One thing to look at is your downspouts. And what we've done here is taken a downspout, a rain gutter, and connected it to a splash block. That's really important to move the water away from the foundation of the building into the plants. You don't want water sitting right at the foundation of your building. And then we planted some juncus grasses right here that like a lot of water in the wintertime, but they're also drought tolerant in the summer. Bananas love a lot of water, so this is the perfect aspect for a banana right at the bottom of the rain gutter, so it collects all the rain and filters down to the roots. And bananas are also great for a gray water system, so situating them somewhere where they get a lot of water, they're going to thrive and really look beautiful. An important concept here with reducing runoff is the first flush. The first flush refers to the water that comes in the beginning of a rainstorm, and it kind of washes off everything and takes the air pollution and the toxins, the hydrocarbons, off of a hard surface like a roof or a parking lot. And what they usually do is run off into the gutter and then into the ocean. And we want to avoid that. So an important thing is to treat that first flush so that the water that first flows that has a lot of the toxics in it goes through a planting area or infiltrates into the soil. So we're going to continue to make changes to the Patagonia campus that improve the stormwater filtration and the overall sustainability of this campus. One of the areas we're focusing on is right here. There's an existing storm drain in a low spot of the campus where all of the water kind of collects during a rainstorm. Most of the water in the current condition doesn't have a chance to run over a planting area or have any filtration or opportunity to infiltrate into the soil. So what we're going to do in the future right here is take out a bunch of this asphalt all the way up to the reception area entrance. We're going to kind of cut a straight line across here, put in a raised boardwalk that allows people to access and connect these two parts of the campus, and then add a little bioswale and infiltration basin right here where I'm standing, because this is the existing low spot. Again, this is where all the water comes in the rain, and instead of just running off and carrying all the trash and toxins right into the ocean, we're going to create a space for the water to go through some plantings and dirt to do that infiltration that we're looking for.
We'll be right back with more Garden Wise.
Did you know the City of Santa Barbara will give you money to lower your water bill and have a beautiful garden? The Smart Rebate program covers renovations that will make your garden more water-wise while protecting the environment. Once approved, you can receive up to $1,000 for homes and up to $4,000 for HOAs, for irrigation equipment, smart irrigation controllers, water-wise plants, and mulch. Turn this into this. Schedule your pre-inspection by calling 564-5460. Let's save together.
You know, the other day, I was chilling at my house when I got my water bill. It was such a rouse. Got me thinking, fix some water, how much time could it take? If you don't do it for the planet, do it for your wallet's sake. So I headed to the bathroom to that leaky sink, because now I'm saving 7 whole gallons a week. And while I'm at it, might as well a local shower head cool. I'm only using half the water that I used to. Fool. Vacuum's on the gout, I'll be saving some money. But the rest of my house, man, that joke isn't funny. So as I went up to clean my dusty driveway, I used a broom and out the hose, saving water, I'll say. And then I busted out the hose to water my lawn. I didn't hit the pavement, cause then the water is gone. I made the change to save the planet and my money too. What the best part is, you can too.
Welcome back.
There are a wide variety of rain gardens to choose from. Up next, another type, the ocean-friendly garden. Now this is a term that was coined by the Surfrider Foundation to help people understand the important connection between rain gardens and clean oceans. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview about what we're doing here to transform what used to be just a traditional landscape with some lawn and plants that weren't especially appropriate. The plan is to transform that into an ocean-friendly garden. And the things we want to do is we want to capture the water, use plants that are appropriate for the site, and allow that water to filter down into those plants' roots so they can be healthy and use that water on the site. So for this particular site, we had kikuyu grass, which is a warm season grass that's extremely strong with little roots. Anybody who's ever had it in their yard knows what I'm talking about, because this stuff is evil, totally evil, gets everywhere. So because it was a warm season grass, we had to remove the grass entirely before starting our sheet mulching. If you have a cool season grass, like a marathon or another type of fescue-based turf, you can sheet mulch directly over that. So to remove the lawn here, they used a sod cutter, which is a machine that you just kind of push in front of you and it'll take up the lawn. You can also remove lawn yourself just with a flat shovel. And if you wet the lawn really well first and just scrape it off, you can do that. It's hard work, I won't lie, but it's definitely possible. I've done it. So the lawn here was removed manually using the sod cutter. And the next step is going to be to do the grading and the earthwork that you can see the volunteers over here doing right now, so that when the water comes off the roof, it gets held and caught inside of these earthworks and little basins and little mini ponds, so that it has a chance to infiltrate and recharge the groundwater in the soil. And also, we don't want it running off into the gutter and into the ocean. So what you can see here is that we've created some interesting topography in the earth and the landscape so that the water has a chance to slow down and infiltrate into the soil. The next step after that is going to be sheet mulching, where we'll take a variety of different materials, including the compost tea that gets sprayed down first as a biological activator for the soil. And then next there will be a weed block barrier, which is this butcher paper that we have right over here. You can also use cardboard or newspaper, but you want some sort of paper product that keeps the weeds from sprouting and germinating. It's an organic weed block. And then on top of that, we're going to put the mulch, a couple inches, 3 or 4 inches of mulch if you've got that much space. And what that does is that is another weed block. It'll also eventually break down into soil. So that sheet mulch ends up being a really thick layer, like a sponge, that activates the soil, keeps the water in, and also makes your plants really healthy. I'm here with Pamela from the Green Gardens Group. You call yourselves G3.
G3.
Right? Mm-hmm. And she's the mastermind designer behind this whole thing here today. So I wanted to get a little bit of her insight about how she made this all happen. So what was kind of the first step or the seed that got planted that led to this great thing here today?
What's wonderful about this site is that it's a public site, but it looks a lot like a regular home. Mm-hmm. So it has a classic style that anybody in Santa Barbara could really relate to. And that was the thing that really attracted us to doing a project here. The seed really was that during a rainstorm, we saw water running down the sidewalk. And so it looks like a regular home. Water's running down the sidewalk. Great place to have an ocean-friendly garden.
Perfect. Okay, so what if you're just a regular homeowner, you're watching this show today, and you go out to your yard in a rainstorm and you realize, hey, the same thing's happening in my yard, that I've got a gutter that's running down my driveway and straight into the gutter. I don't want that to go to the ocean. What's a good first step for a homeowner if they want to actually implement some of this stuff in their own yard?
Well, you said exactly the right thing, which is that you go outside when it rains. Instead of running inside, when the rain's happening, you got to go out and spend some time in the garden, looking at the roof, looking at the downspouts, figuring out where the water's going. That's the most important thing that you can do. But the second thing that you can do, and this is really inexpensive, is just buy one of those diverters. I mean, they're just like a tube that you can put on the end of your downspout and redirect that water into your landscape.
That's right.
So that it isn't running off onto the driveway or it isn't running off onto a hard surface. And then observe what happens to the water once you're putting it onto your landscape. And take the time to really kind of, wait and see how that spreads out. Because that will inform you what area you would really have to remove, let's say if you have turf or grass, what area would you have to remove in order to make the biggest impact without taking out your whole lawn?
Gotcha. So you're looking for a place where the water kind of already naturally settles. And you're just
Exactly.
enhancing that and making a bigger capacity so
Exactly.
that the water can stay there longer and recharge the groundwater. And a few of the things you need to look out for are bringing the water away from the foundation of your home.
Absolutely. You know, we'd like to get at least 9 feet away from a building if we possibly can. Minimum 9 feet. But certainly more than that would be even better.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay. I'm here with Paul from the Surfrider Foundation. You're the coordinator for the Ocean Friendly Gardens program, right?
That's right.
Okay, well, why do surfers care about gardens?
Well, you know, they're surfing in water that is coming from someplace upstream, not just the water that's in the ocean. So every time you turn on your hose or your sprinkler, and any of that water leaves your property, it gets into the street, it goes into a storm drain, those go right to the ocean untreated.
Right.
It's a very effective way of keeping our property from flooding, but it's also a very effective way of polluting the ocean and the surf.
What kind of stuff ends up in the water that people put on their lawns and on their gardens?
Well, there's a lot of things that end in side: herbicide, pesticide, fungicide. There's also stuff that is put on as a fertilizer. Maybe somebody has their dog that's walking by and the dog goes to the bathroom, they don't pick it up.
Right.
And then there's the car that parks on the driveway, and maybe there's some brake pad dust, oil coming off the car. And then there's just the exhaust. When we're driving around, it goes into the air and it settles. And it settles on a hard surface. And so the next time it rains, or we create a rain by the hose, washing our car, washing down the driveway, it's going to the street.
Goes to the ocean.
Yeah.
So a good thing you can do to protect the ocean is not to use herbicide or pesticide in your garden. But what you've organized today with this workshop is getting people to go a step further and actually create a garden that cleans the water.
That's right.
So can you tell us a little bit about how that works?
Absolutely. Surfrider calls it applying CPR to the garden, kind of like wanting to resuscitate somebody who's choking. Well, our landscapes in many ways are choking. So CPR stands for conservation, permeability, and retention.
Okay.
And it's to help revive our watersheds. You know, we all live in this kind of bowl of a site. Wherever we are, we're in a watershed. There's a high point and a low point. And in between, we want to, what has been called slow it, spread it, sink it. We want water to slow down, have a chance to spread out and sink in to the soil. Because like you're saying, the soil acts like a filter.
Right.
So what we're doing here at this site is what anybody could do at their home. Water that falls on the roof, water that goes onto, let's say, a rain gutter and then to a downspout is directed onto the driveway. That's the way city code has been for a long time. It's now changing. It's called low impact design. And that's the idea of directing that water into the landscape. And it serves two purposes. It's free water. Why use water from the hose, which in Santa Barbara's case is a local source. But besides Santa Barbara and Ventura, everywhere else we're shipping in water from far away. And as a side note, #1 user of electricity in the state, moving and cleaning water. So we want to reduce our energy use by reducing our water use. So back to the site. We're taking water from the roof, we're directing it into the landscape. Then we're turning the soil into a sponge. Part of that is through uncompacting the soil. You know, this grass is walked on for years. It gets compacted. So like at school, when we were in elementary school, you'd come back on a Monday, you'd see all those little plugs of soil on the lawn. That's to aerate it. That's to let air and oxygen come through. In this site, we've completely removed the lawn because in many ways it's ornamental. It's not really being used. We're not anti-grass. We're for appropriate use of grass. So in this case, we're saying, let's make sure that the soil is actually permeable. And it wasn't. It was compacted. So we're aerating the soil, making it loose, and then we're adding on material that acts like a sponge. And that's made up of different kinds of material like compost tea, paper, and mulch. That's what's called sheet mulching.
Nice. So you've organized this community work day today, and we've got a great turnout, tons of people. It's awesome.
Awesome.
And all these people hopefully can go home and learn how to do an ocean-friendly garden in their own yards. And if enough people do this, we can decrease the pollution in the ocean, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and decrease water use.
And decrease water use.
And also decrease green waste. You know, all that stuff that people put in their green bins, mowing the lawn, tree trimming. You know, a lot of that is because either plants are overplanted, they're too close together, so you prune them a lot, or it's a plant that's not appropriate to the climate. You know, it's just not meant to be here. So the plants that we're going to be planting today are native to the area. They're adapted, and we're going to properly space them.
Here we are back in Spencer Adams Park. About 6 weeks has passed since our first workshop where we did the grading and some of the soil moving and soil amending that we needed to do along with the sheet mulching to start this ocean-friendly garden. Today we're going to finish off the project with irrigation and planting. And as you can see, quite a bit of work has been done here with the rocks to make this beautiful rock swale that's going to be planted and just look really lovely. The flags mark the locations of the plants, and we've got a nice selection here of native plants that are going to fill in and make this habitat-friendly, ocean-friendly garden. So here's the outflow pipe where the water from the roof gets collected in the gutters, and then the pipe's underneath the ground, and it daylights here. There's a screen inside to keep any rodents or mice or anything from going in and crawling up. And you'll see when it rains that this will just fill up with water, and the water will have a chance to soak into the earth and recharge the groundwater. That's what we want. Keep the water in place, avoid it from running off. Here's one of the plants that we focused on in the plant rant a few episodes back. It's Arctostaphylos. This one is Arctostaphylos Howard McMinn. It'll turn into a shrub that's about a 3 or 4 foot wide, nice mass that can be a screen or a backdrop. It's a very drought-tolerant plant. It's evergreen. It's one of the plants that's going to be a foundation plant for this ocean-friendly garden. Here's another one of the plants we're going to use in the ocean-friendly garden today, Rhamnus californica, coffee berry. It's another evergreen plant, but this one likes a little bit more shade. It's got this pretty red stem and nice broad green leaves. Does best in the either morning light or a little bit of shade. Doesn't really like strong sun, but can form a just gorgeous screen or backdrop to some of the other more colorful plants we're using.
Thanks to Surfrider, the Green Gardens Group, and a team of volunteers, this slice of Spencer Adams Park has been transformed into a sustainable, ocean-friendly garden.
To learn more about ocean-friendly gardens, visit surfrider.org and click on Programs. Up next, Jeff Nyman tells us about his favorite tree, Prunus ilicifolia, in What Tree Is That?
What tree is that? What tree is that? Ah, what tree is that? What tree is that?
Hi, my name is Jeff Nyman. I am owner of Santa Barbara Natives Nursery with my partner John Warner, and we grow native plants like this one right here, which is one of my favorites, Prunus ilicifolia. It's one of my favorite trees because it is a tree that you can water not at all, or you can water it a lot. It looks great in a home landscape as a hedge or as a specimen. And it does great in the shade, as you see here under this oak tree, or in the full sun. So the common name for this plant is hollyleaf cherry, or islay. And it's found all over Santa Barbara, in the chaparral, along riparian areas like this, along the creeks, just up from the creek. And it's also found right down by the beach where I live on the mesa. We have some really nice ones. It grows as a shrub quite well. It can be hedged and kept as a screen, or you can literally train it up into a really nice tree. The subspecies that grows on the islands gets up to 40 feet tall. And it thrives in areas where oak fungus is, where the oak trees are dying off. You can plant this and it does really well. You can put it just uphill in a rain garden. It'll suck up the water and does great with a little bit of water. You can put it in an area of landscaping where you have lots of irrigation happening. It will not hurt this plant. Or you can put it in an area where it gets absolutely zero water after the rainy season like here, and it still looks good the whole year. This is an evergreen tree, even though it's in the prune family, which is peaches, plums, apricots. This tree, different from those, is evergreen. So it's great for a screen and a hedge. And if you go to Montecito, you'll see this tree in many places, big, huge hedges of it. And it doesn't get a lot of the diseases that the eugenia and the myoporum and other hedge trees get. It's quite disease resistant. It makes a really attractive fruit that wildlife loves. So right here we have an exceptionally large fruit. This is from the tree that's been growing in my yard probably for 80 years or so. And the fruit is really yummy on this tree. And you can take that fruit and do like the Chumash did. You could put it in a basket or a bowl and ferment it and create an alcoholic drink. They also use the wood to make their bows, and the leaves, roots, and bark all have medicinal qualities that were used. And the seed that's inside has a nut that the Chumash, I've been told, and I think I've read, valued twice as much as an acorn from an oak tree. They would pound it, leach it out because it has cyanide in it, and create a porridge from that seed. Here you see some other examples. These are from Mountain Drive. You can see there's quite a lot of variation in the seeds. The flowers come in the spring, and the fruit come in mid to late summer. So as you can see, the animals have been getting at this one. It's the last one on the tree. These trees can be loaded with fruit, and birds like them a lot. So do squirrels and other animals, both for the fruit and for the seed, the nut inside. And it's great for home landscapes. It's easy to maintain. The only thing you wouldn't want to do is put it over a pathway where the fruit might stain. We grow this at the nursery, Santa Barbara Natives, sbnatives.com. It's very popular for landscapers and also for restoration projects. And you can buy it at other nurseries also because it is a popular hedge tree.
Well, that does it for this episode of Garden Wise. Remember, you are the agent of change, and together we can conserve water and reduce pollution. There's tons of resources online that can help. Visit waterwisesb.org for more info. Or you could give us a call at 564-5311. I'm your host, Meg West. Until next time, keep it green, Santa Barbara.